Since the UFC started giving President Trump his own personal walkouts, and that's been happening a little bit more as time has gone on with the UFC, the MMA community has brought this topic to light many times. And while we have the 2-week break, I finally actually want to talk about this. We're going to be talking about the idea and something like this post. For just an example, ACD MMA posted this. What is your honest opinion on Donald Trump being featured prominently during UFC broadcasts? I'm going to give my thoughts, and of course, we're going to take a look at what the internet thinks about this afterwards down below. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. So like I said, I'm going to be giving my thoughts in general on what I think about this, and then we're going to open things up to the internet and what they had to say, okay? And to be honest, guys, I still can't believe how shocked people are. Like, I made an entire video before the election talking about how all of your favorite fighters are conservative, and it's shocking to me that this is still, like, taking place, right? We saw pictures of, fighters posting with MAGA hats, and then there was all of these comments like, ugh, to think I respected you. Like, what did you expect? Like, the only one I could think of off the top of my head is Dan Ige. Just, he posted that picture and just got all the hate in the world all of a sudden, You're watching a sport where grown men and women punch each other in the face in a cage for a living. Like, do you realistically think that culture would lean progressive at all? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but at what point do we start thinking a little bit critically here? Like, the amount of people I've seen shocked by this are beyond me. And again, if you're interested, go check out that other video. I made an entire video touching on that, okay? But I think it's important that we actually break this down a little bit before we, get into all of these replies over here. The vast majority of MMA fighters come from tough, blue-collar backgrounds. They didn't grow up in any, coastal city. They didn't attend any, liberal schools. They grew up broke. They worked security. They wrestled guys in, gyms and fought for sketchy promotions and barely make enough money to pay rent. A ton of them come from things like law enforcement, military backgrounds, or wrestling programs. All of these things are traditionally conservative lanes. And something I forgot to mention is please don't just assume what I believe. I keep them private. I'm just thinking critically here, okay? Their values: discipline, accountability, strength. MMA is one of the few places left where being a man still kind of means something, where traditional masculinity isn't demonized, but instead it's actually celebrated. These guys don't live in any sort of echo chambers. They were raised in survival, and arguably, one could argue they were raised properly. Of course they lean conservative. That's not political. That's just the reality of their world, and that's the reality of being men. MMA allows these fighters to naturally thrive as themselves, to naturally thrive as being men. And it's not to say like any of these guys are heartless either, it's quite the opposite. Most of them are incredibly loyal, they're incredibly protective, they're family oriented, but they also believe in earning your place. They don't care about things like, and I'm sorry, and I hate to use this buzzword, guys, I'm sorry, but I can't think of anything else. Safe spaces, okay? They care about self-respect and that type of mentality, If you stop for a second and think logically, you might not be surprised anymore. Every single time this type of conversation comes up, it's like, ugh, the MMA community does not like this, okay? But what about the fan base in general? Like, both at home and at these actual events, okay? They're not different from what I just said, and not different from the fighters. You're not getting the typical, blue-pilled user on X. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully. I'm just kind of trying to create an understanding about the people that I'm talking about. You're getting working-class Americans, small business owners, gym rats, guys who served in the military, people who just respect toughness in general. The people around this area respect power, and they respect presence. And to a lot of them, the president represents that. And whether you agree with that or not, this is how the vast majority of MMA fighters and MMA fans feel. So this is where I don't understand why people get so bent out of shape when the president gets his own walkout. Do you want the UFC, or do you expect the UFC to cater to the minority? The president gets a walkout, it's 2 minutes of the broadcast. That's it. If a fighter gets a cool knockout, they go and shake the president's hand. That's what, another 10 seconds? Maybe they take a picture with them. I don't understand why that bothers people so much, whether you agree with them or not. And I know, I already know what some of you are about to comment down below. I can already hear your fingers typing on this, and I can already hear some of it, okay? But what if it was Biden? What if it was Obama? Then you would be posting TikToks, and you'd be posting edits of it with emotional captions. Let's not act about that this is about any sort of principle. It's just about who you like, and if we're being real, Every president has had pop culture moments. Trump's just doing it in a sport that, like, welcomes him. A lot of former presidents have had their moments in various sports. I'm not going to be honest with you guys. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but we've seen it time and time again of, like, things like first pitches, you know? It happens. So if you're offended by a walkout, just to be honest with you, I don't know if MMA is exactly your sport. And to be honest, I completely understand. Completely understand if you do not want to keep watching the sport because of things like this. It's fine to want to separate politics. And to be honest with you, I agree with that for the most part. But most of the MMA fan base does not want to do that. Vote with your wallet. It's the best thing that you can do. Don't buy the pay-per-views. Don't support the UFC. Don't buy any merch. Vote with your wallet. Unfortunately, though, the community is not going to change for you. It will not change for you. It's always been this way. And the sooner that you accept that, the happier that you might be. To say all of that, I think I glossed over the idea that I just think it, like, here's what I kind of think about it. It's not that deep. Why is this such a big deal every single time that this happens? Whether you agree with it or not. And again, I ask that you just don't assume anything about my own political ideology. I keep that private for YouTube. I just don't get how you can look at this. And if you don't like Donald Trump, don't watch it or just shake your head at it. I don't care. Why does it need to be such like a big grand thing all the time? But it doesn't stop there. And I really don't want to be the guy who constantly craps all over somebody. I just want to acknowledge one of the ideas that, you know, got a ton of attention from this post in particular, and it was by Luke Thomas over here. This is what Luke Thomas had to say, and, like, we're going to get into what everybody else had to say about this conversation online recently. Luke had this to say: the fan base doesn't want to hear this or won't think it's relevant, even though it's true, but it's extremely polarizing. Roughly half the country doesn't like him. Many consider him radioactive. I have endless testimonials from former fans who view MMA's overt right turn as a deal breaker. Like, it's tough. You know what? I want to break this one down just a little bit more because, again, it got a lot of attention, and Luke said something that I don't want to say a lot of, in the grand scheme of things, it is a lot of MMA fans, but in the bigger grand scheme of things, it's how a minority feel, you know? Okay, like, I respect and I understand what Luke is saying, but I do have some pushback when it comes to this particular tweet over here, and no hate towards Luke at all, okay? I think he makes great content. So, first, yes, Trump is polarizing, but so is everything now. Taylor Swift, Bud Light, like gas oven stoves, phone brands. Tomorrow, like, breathing in this direction might be, you know? We're living in a time where literally anything can spark any sort of outrage. So acting like the UFC is uniquely problematic for giving the president airtime feels dishonest, you know? It's not that MMA made things political. It's that politics now infect everything. And I'd be curious as to how they feel about the other sports obviously being more left-leaning. So, secondly, let's talk about this, you know, right turn. MMA didn't make a right turn. It was never veering left to begin with. The sport has always been like this. It's just that now, more people outside of the small bubble have been paying attention. You know, the UFC has gone completely mainstream. These guys didn't suddenly change. Your expectations were just wrong. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think that's more on you and not them. So, and to mention his other point over here, like, if the fans are leaving, so be it. That's how every single form of entertainment works. Some people walk away, others choose to step in. You don't change your entire culture because a few people are upset about the comments. Like I said, vote with your wallet. That's how business works. And again, there isn't exactly, like, going to be a lot of people leaving from the grand scheme of things. Like I just mentioned, all of those reasons that I was talking about, like why MMA leans conservative, it's most people here, you know? Fourth, like, the half the country hates Trump line, like, half the country hates every president, to be honest with you. That doesn't mean that no one should ever appear anywhere. Biden has had its sports moments. Again, like, Obama's had his sports moments. Nobody made a big deal about those moments. Like, nobody tried to boycott anything about a first pitch. And I wish that I could think of more examples off the top of my head for you, but I can't, okay? Like, let's not pretend that there aren't fans that love this too. Fans who are sick of the fake progressive front that so many other sports like to put on. And whether or you're not that you agree with any of the progressiveness, it is just a front. The people behind the scenes couldn't care less, and they just want your money. Fans that appreciate the UFC tend to be honest, they tend to be more masculine, and that's a big part of the appeal. That's a big part of having their politics represented in sports. It's fine to want to separate that, and I would prefer to as well, but this is the truth. So, yeah, you're right that some people are walking away, but you're missing the bigger truth. way more people are walking in than out. And I know that might not necessarily agree with your ideology, but they're not ashamed of what they're seeing. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a small number of people when we're talking about the overwhelming majority of the MMA fan base that actually end up leaving. And how many people, like, let's be real, how many people do actually, like, I'm done with this, and then they just, like, watch it the next day? Again, I just don't understand why it's such a big deal to so many people. But let's continue on. I wanted to acknowledge Luke's because that was the biggest sort of conversation that took place from this post, okay? The Discord Traveler had this to say: "It would be really funny to see a UFC fighter flip him off after a win instead of glazing him." And people like, that could make for some crazy moments. And here's the thing too, if that were to happen, all these people coming like, "Oh my God, we need to separate the politics from MMA," they'd be like, "Hell yeah!" That's what they'd be doing. They wouldn't be going, "Oh no, I'm tired of this. I just want to watch a sport," you know? I'm not saying Luke would do that, and I don't want to bring that conversation over to Luke because I just, like, spent a bunch of time responding to that. It's just, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Orbit Oddity had this to say: "I get the don't make it political from a lot of UFC fans, yet it's radio silence when a UFC broadcast becomes a Trump glaze." I don't think that it ever actually becomes a Trump glaze. Again, in the grand scheme of things, out of the entirety of the pay-per-view, how long is that walkout? How long are these fighters winning and taking pictures for? If I had to ballpark it, it's less than 5 minutes. The entire thing, maybe less than 10 minutes. Out of the entirety of the 3 hours, and if you're including prelims, out of the entirety of the 6, maybe plus hours, weigh-in show, 9 hours, it's such a small thing that I just don't understand the big deal. And I would keep this consistent. And again, I ask that you don't assume anything about my own ideology. Whoever I agree with, whoever I like, whoever I dislike, I would have that same energy either way. And to be honest with you, I'm one of those guys, and I don't mean to be like the entitled centrist, because I'm not a centrist, I'll be honest with you, but I don't want to come off as one of those guys where it's like the entitled centrist, but I don't look up to politicians. I just don't. I don't trust anybody, you know? So I don't think it's that deep, man. It's cringe and embarrassing, Eli had to say. If they gave Biden his own walkout for every event that he attended, that Joe Rogan online right would piss their pants up and down the street and boycott every UFC until the end of time. That just wouldn't happen, though. That's incorrect. That wouldn't happen. People would go, "Oh, the president's here." Some people would like it, some people wouldn't. And yeah, you know what? There might be people, just like there is on the left, freaking out about this. It would not be like some big parade that people are making it out to be, okay? Kyle had this to say: "I think generally it's pretty weird. It alienates a significant portion of the fan base, and for a massive international audience, it's at best kind of funny, or for some, it's considered pretty insulting. I do get why the UFC does it, though. I don't hold it against them personally." We shouldn't be holding against them personally. And I don't think the rest of the world is looking at this and making such a big deal about it. People, or at least normal people, just look at this and they continue watching the sport that they're watching. They don't really think too much of it, okay? Martin P had this to say: "I've been a fan since the late 90s, and I've been to 30 UFC events. I'm very close to being done, and it's not even just because of politics being forced on us. Apex, trash at ESPN+, lack of stability in divisions, lack of passion effort from the UFC and ticket prices. It's become too much." I mean, that's a lot of different things to break it down, but there are other reasons why you shouldn't be happy with MMA as opposed to a president getting a walkout in MMA, okay? Hydro MMA had this to say: "Kind of corny that they walk him out like he's a fighter, but other than that, it doesn't matter. He's there to be a fan like all of us." Yeah, like, I understand that. It could be corny. I actually don't look at it as corny. I go like, "Oh, the president's here." I thought it was corny when The Rock did it for the BMF belt, but other than that, I don't look at it and I don't think it's corny, but I think it's fair to look at that and think it's corny. I get it. It's like a thing that the fighters do. It sucks. As Dana White says, keep politics out of MMA, but the events are basically Trump or... I don't even know if I can say that word online. Can I? But we're not gonna, okay? Obviously, that is a huge, turn from what we're talking about. It is a little interesting, though, that Dana used to be so big on, like, oh, keep politics out of MMA, keep religion out of MMA. I actually think it makes it more interesting when people of all sorts of religions, people from all sorts of cultures, can come in and they can say their own thing. And if you don't like it, you can beat the crap out of each other. I think that's kind of cool personally, but I totally understand keeping the politics out of MMA. I could get behind that. If we really wanted to keep every single little bit of politics out of it, sure, okay? Ultimate Punching had this to say: "On the one hand, I get it. He's the president. He's clearly a fight fan, and having him there certainly makes the sport even more mainstream. However, I think the big walkouts and parade to him in the building every fight is a bit much. And the parade of him into the building every fight, excuse me. I think that's a fair and balanced take, to be honest with you. I don't look at that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But of course, you guys get the point. There are a ton of dividing opinions about this. It seems like most normal people don't really think too much about it. They could think it's corny, but they just don't sit down and they don't start, I'm not talking about like ACD MMA, it's an MMA page, they make discussions, but too many people are making such a big deal about this. If you're interested in that video that I was talking about all of your favorite fighters being conservative, then you can check out this video on screen right now. I would love to have you guys over there. It was crazy, man. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, guys.